Maria thought she could trust Jason, but when betrayal cuts deepest, her fight for survival takes a dark turn. Ridgewood was a town that most people would call quiet, a place where everyone knew everyone and life moved slowly. Its charm was in its simplicity, with rows of old houses, tree-lined streets, and a handful of local shops. Nothing ever seemed out of place, especially at night when the town fell into an eerie silence. Maria Thompson had grown up here. She knew every corner of Ridgewood and often took the quiet streets back home after a long shift at the local hospital. It was a place that felt safe, even comforting. Little did she know, that night, everything was about to change. It was just past 10 p.m. when Maria finally left the hospital, her shift having run late as usual. She was exhausted, her feet aching from the long hours of running around helping patients. After a few quiet goodbyes to her colleagues, she stepped into her car, hoping to get home, shower, and sleep. Her fingers drummed the steering wheel as she pulled out of the hospital parking lot, her headlights illuminating the empty road ahead. The late-night drive should have been peaceful, but tonight it felt different. A feeling of unease lingered in the air, thickening the silence around her. She kept glancing in her rearview mirror, noticing nothing but the empty stretch of road behind her. Still, something didn't sit right. She shrugged it off. Maybe it was just fatigue. As she passed the outskirts of the town, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, breaking her thoughts. A call from an unknown number flashed on the screen. Maria hesitated, her finger hovering over the decline button. She didn't recognize the number and figured it was probably another telemarketer. She could just ignore it. But then curiosity got the best of her. She tapped the screen and answered. "Hello?" Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady. There was silence on the other end for a moment, followed by a low, raspy voice that sent a chill down her spine. "Maria, you don't know me, but I know you. I've been watching, and tonight, your secrets end." The voice was unsettlingly calm, almost like it was reading from a script. The words felt rehearsed but menacing. Maria's heart began to race, her hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Who is this? What do you want?" she demanded, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But there was no response, just a soft click as the line went dead. Maria stared at the screen in disbelief, her breath shallow. She had received prank calls before, but this felt different. Her instincts screamed that she was in danger, but she couldn't figure out why. She looked in the rearview mirror again. Nothing. The road was still empty. She tried to push the feeling away, blaming the late hour and her exhaustion. She started the car again, trying to shake the nerves and focus on getting home. But the unease remained, creeping over her like a heavy fog. A black sedan was parked by the side of the road, its headlights off. She didn't recognize the car. It wasn't there earlier when she passed this way on her way to the hospital. For a brief moment, she thought about calling the police, but she hesitated. It was probably nothing, just someone who had pulled over for a break. Yet the unease continued to grow in the pit of her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Maria turned the corner and accelerated, trying to get away from the unsettling sight of the dark car. But as she drove, her phone buzzed again, the same unknown number. Her hands trembled as she answered, wondering if the same voice would be on the other end. "Maria!" The voice whispered, so quiet that it almost sounded like it was coming from inside her car. "Nice try, but I'm closer than you think." Maria's pulse quickened, her grip on the steering wheel tightening as she looked around. The sedan was behind her again, following at a slow but deliberate pace, its headlights glaring through the rear-view mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed the gas pedal, trying to put distance between herself and the mysterious car, but it stayed right behind her, never wavering. She took a sharp turn down another street, hoping to lose the car, but when she looked behind her, the black sedan was still there, following closely. Her mind raced. Was she being stalked, or was this just some bizarre coincidence? She couldn't take the chance. In a panic, Maria pulled into the nearest gas station, hoping there would be other people there. The parking lot was empty, save for a few parked cars. Maria quickly turned off her engine and glanced in the rearview mirror, but the black sedan was gone. Her heart still pounded in her chest. She stepped out of the car, glancing nervously around. The gas station clerk was inside, and a few customers were paying for their gas, but there was no sign of the black sedan. Maria took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe it was just someone driving home late like her. But the strange phone call, the eerie voice, the feeling of being followed, it didn't sit right with her. She filled her tank quickly, avoiding eye contact with the clerk, before rushing back to her car. She decided to take the highway home instead of the back roads, hoping the higher traffic would make her feel safer. The road was busy, and for a while, she tried to shake the unsettling feeling that had taken hold of her. The headlights of passing cars created a comforting blur of light, yet the thought of the black sedan lingered, like a shadow in the back of her mind, and then her phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Her fingers shook as she hit play. "Maria, I'm closer than you think. You can't hide." The voice was closer this time, as though it was in the car with her. Maria's eyes darted to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the black sedan right behind her. But there was nothing, just the glow of streetlights and the blur of passing cars. The rest of the drive home was a blur. Maria's heart beat faster with each passing mile, but no matter how fast she drove, she couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Every shadow on the side of the road seemed to loom closer. Every turn felt like she was being pursued. When she finally pulled into her apartment complex, she was exhausted, mentally and physically. She parked in her usual spot and quickly got out of the car, her eyes scanning the parking lot for any sign of the black sedan. She saw nothing. Still, the sense of dread didn't leave her. Her apartment was on the second floor of a building that looked out over a quiet courtyard. As she walked to her door, she kept glancing around, as if someone might be hiding in the shadows, waiting for her to slip up. She quickly unlocked the door and stepped inside, locking it behind her. The apartment felt cold, and the familiar sounds of her home did little to calm her nerves. She checked her phone again. Another voicemail. This time, the voice was more sinister than before. "You won't make it out this time, Maria." A shiver ran down her spine. She tossed her phone onto the couch and went to the kitchen, trying to distract herself by making a cup of tea. But as she waited for the kettle to boil, a movement caught her eye. Through the window, she saw something. Someone, standing near the parking lot. A shadow. She couldn't see clearly from this distance, but the figure didn't move. It was just standing there, watching. Maria's heart pounded in her chest. She quickly closed the blinds and backed away from the window, her pulse racing. Through the window, she saw something. Someone, standing near the parking lot. A shadow. She couldn't see clearly from this distance, but the figure didn't move. It was just standing there, watching. Maria's heart pounded in her chest. She quickly closed the blinds and backed away from the window, her pulse racing. The lights flickered, and then everything went dark. Maria stood still in her apartment, the sudden darkness sending a rush of panic through her veins. The soft hum of the lights was gone, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press in from all sides. She felt vulnerable, exposed, as though the walls themselves were closing in on her. Her first instinct was to check the circuit breaker, but the idea of walking down the hallway to the darkened basement made her stomach churn. She couldn't help but feel the weight of something unseen in the room with her. Her eyes darted from corner to corner, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. Trying to regain her composure, Maria took a deep breath and reached for her phone. It had been a lifeline so far, keeping her connected to the world outside her apartment. But when she tried to unlock it, the screen remained dark. No signal. No service. "Great," she muttered under her breath, setting the phone aside. She glanced at the kitchen window, remembering the figure she'd seen standing in the parking lot. Had it been real? Or had the growing panic been distorting her vision? The sound of a distant door slamming broke the silence. Maria froze. Her heart skipped a beat. That wasn't the wind. Someone had to be outside. She moved cautiously toward the window, part of her hoping she'd just imagined the figure. But when she pulled back the blinds and peered outside, she saw nothing. The parking lot was empty, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. "Get a grip," she whispered to herself, but her voice cracked in the silence. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. The strange phone calls, the black sedan following her, and now the power going out. It couldn't all be a coincidence. Was someone out there? Was someone playing games with her? Or worse, were they watching her right now? Her breath quickened as she retreated from the window, feeling as though every muscle in her body was on high alert. She needed to make a plan. Get out of the apartment? Call the police? But with no signal, no way to contact anyone, she was alone. She decided to check the hallway, just to be sure. As she stepped into the darkened corridor outside her apartment, the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, as if reaching for her. Every creak of the building felt amplified, echoing off the walls in the stillness. She could hear her pulse thumping in her ears as she made her way down the hallway, keeping her movement slow and deliberate. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No signs of anyone in the building. With a deep sigh, she returned to her apartment, locking the door behind her again. She moved towards the kitchen, more out of habit than need. But as she flicked on the faucet, she noticed something strange. The water pressure was off. It trickled weakly from the tap, as if something was blocking the flow. Maria frowned, her unease growing with each passing minute. She knew she should have checked the breaker. Maybe it was an electrical issue, but why hadn't the lights come back on? Why was the water running low? As her thoughts swirled, a sudden knock at the door made her jump. The sound was loud and sharp, echoing down the hallway, making her stomach churn. She hesitated, frozen for a long moment. The knock came again, this time more urgent. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She should have ignored it. She should have stayed hidden. But her curiosity, coupled with the growing sense of dread, propelled her forward. She stepped quietly toward the door, making sure to stay out of view from the peephole. Another knock. This time, the door rattled slightly, as if someone was testing it. "Maria, open the door." Her blood ran cold. That voice. It wasn't a stranger's. It was the same voice from the phone calls, the same low rasp. It was muffled, as though it was coming from behind the door, but unmistakable. The silence after the words hung in the air, felt suffocating. She could hear her own breathing, shallow and fast, as she backed away from the door. Was it really them? The person who had been stalking her? She looked around the apartment, searching for something to defend herself with. But there was nothing. Not even a kitchen knife within reach. Her phone, which was now dead, was the only potential weapon she had, and it was useless. A scream echoed from another floor in the building, a terrified, gut-wrenching scream that cut through the thick silence like a knife. It was a woman's voice. Maria's eyes widened. That wasn't the sound of someone playing a prank. It was real. Someone was in danger. Without thinking, she grabbed her keys from the counter and bolted for the door. She had to help. She had to find out who was in trouble. But before she could even touch the doorknob, it suddenly swung open. She stumbled back in surprise, her heart leaping into her throat. The figure standing in the doorway was cloaked in darkness, their face obscured by shadows. "Who are you?" Maria demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they stepped forward, blocking her exit. A cold draft seemed to sweep through the doorway, sending chills down her spine. Maria's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. But the figure remained still, not making a sound. And then, in a voice that sent a ripple of terror through her, the figure spoke. "You won't escape, Maria. It's too late for that." Her breath caught in her throat as the door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in the apartment with the shadowy figure. In the sudden darkness, she could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her, the walls closing in. Her body was frozen with fear, but the figure moved closer, their presence an oppressive force in the room. "Please don't hurt me," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't answer. Instead, a soft chuckle echoed through the apartment, a sound that made her skin crawl. She realized, too late, that the person in front of her wasn't just a stranger. They knew her. They had been following her for longer than she realized, and now it was time to face the consequences. Maria's heart pounded in her chest as the figure moved closer. Each step they took seemed to echo in the dead silence of the apartment, amplifying her growing sense of dread. She felt cornered, trapped, with no way to escape. The shadowy figure was now only a few feet away from her, and their presence felt suffocating. "You've been so good at running, Maria," the figure said, their voice low and mocking. "But you can't run forever." Maria's pulse raced. "What do you want from me?" Her voice was a mixture of fear and anger. She refused to let them see how terrified she truly was. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, they stepped closer until they were standing directly in front of her, their face still hidden in the darkness. Maria's eyes frantically scanned the room, searching for something, anything, that could help her fight back. But everything seemed out of reach. "You don't remember me, do you?" The figure continued, their voice growing colder. Maria's confusion deepened. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" A cold laugh echoed from the figure as they slowly removed a dark hood from their head. The face that emerged from the shadows sent a jolt of recognition through Maria's veins. Her breath caught in her throat. "You're—" Her voice faltered as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The face before her was someone she hadn't seen in years, a face from her past, someone she had thought was long gone. "It's been a long time, Maria," the person said with a smirk, their eyes glinting with a mixture of hatred and satisfaction. "I'm surprised you don't remember me. But then again, you always were good at forgetting the people who mattered." Maria felt a rush of panic surge through her. She recognized them now, though it had taken a few seconds for the memory to resurface. The person standing before her was Alex, her childhood friend, the one she had trusted more than anyone, the one who had disappeared from her life years ago without a trace. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. What happened to you? Why are you doing this?" Alex's lips curled into a twisted smile. "You left me, Maria. You ran away from everything, from me, from the life we could have had. And now, it's my turn to make you understand what it feels like to be abandoned." Maria's mind was spinning. Alex had always been a bit of a troublemaker back in their younger days, but she never imagined they could be capable of something like this. What had happened to them in the years since she had last seen them? "Why now?" Maria demanded, her voice shaking. "Why are you doing this to me?" Alex stepped forward, and for the first time, Maria could see the anger and pain etched into their features. "Because, Maria, you left me to rot, and now I'm going to make sure you never forget it." The words stung, but Maria wasn't about to back down. She took a deep breath, her mind working furiously to find a way out of the situation. She needed to escape. She couldn't let Alex control her. Suddenly, a thought struck her. "Wait," she said quickly, trying to buy herself some time. "If you've been watching me all this time, then you know everything about me, right? You know what I've been through, what happened to me after you left?" Alex's eyes narrowed, their expression darkening. "You think I care about your sob story?" They laughed bitterly. "I don't care about you, Maria. Not anymore. All that matters now is that you finally understand the price of abandoning me." Maria felt a pang of guilt twist in her stomach. She had always known that Alex had been hurt when they lost touch, but she had never imagined things had gone this far. But now was not the time to feel guilty. It was the time to fight for her life. "Why are you doing this now?" Maria asked again, her voice steadying. "Why go to all this trouble? You could have just disappeared, like you did before." Alex's eyes glinted with something darker, something Maria couldn't quite place. "Because you were never supposed to leave. I watched everything, every step you took, every mistake you made. I waited patiently. And now, I'm here to make you pay for all of it." Maria swallowed hard, her throat dry with fear. She knew what she had to do, but she had to act quickly, or it would be too late. She darted toward the kitchen, hoping to get a few precious seconds to think. Alex was fast, though. Too fast. Before Maria could even reach the counter, she felt a hand grip her arm, spinning her around to face them. The coldness in Alex's eyes sent a shiver down her spine. "You think you can escape?" Alex hissed, tightening their grip. You think you can run again?" Maria fought the panic rising in her chest. She had no choice. She had to do something, anything, to break free. Her eyes locked on a heavy ceramic vase on the kitchen shelf, its base sturdy and sharp. She grabbed it in one swift motion, swinging it toward Alex's head with all her strength. The vase crashed against Alex's skull with a sickening thud. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Alex staggered back, their hand flying to their head, blood trickling from the wound. They looked at Maria with a mixture of surprise and rage, but the shock was fleeting. "You think that's enough to stop me?" Alex growled, their voice low and dangerous. "You haven't even begun to understand what's at stake." Maria backed away, fear clawing at her throat. She had made a mistake. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Maria's heart raced in her chest as she stumbled backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The vase had only bought her a moment of respite, and now Alex was angrier than ever. The blood trickling down their foreheads seemed to fuel their rage, rather than deter them. "Running away again, Maria?" Alex sneered, wiping the blood from their face. "You always were a coward." Maria's back hit the wall as she tried to put distance between herself and Alex. Her mind raced, searching for any way to stop them, any way to get out of this nightmare. She couldn't let Alex win. She couldn't let them take control of her life again. Alex stepped forward, their movement slow and deliberate, as if savoring the moment. "You really think you can get away from me this time? You think you can just erase everything we've been through?" Maria clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to steady herself. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, trying to keep her voice strong. "You don't know what I've been through." Alex's eyes glinted with malice. "I know more than you think. You think I didn't see it? The way you abandoned me and everything we had? You think you can just walk away and leave me in the past?" They took another step forward, their gaze never leaving hers. Maria swallowed hard, the weight of the past pressing down on her chest. She had spent years running from the truth, from the memories of what had happened between her and Alex, but now, in this moment, she couldn't escape it any longer. The truth was staring her in the face. "I didn't want to leave," Maria said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I had to. I couldn't stay in that life anymore. I couldn't stay with you." Alex's laugh was bitter, filled with an emotion Maria couldn't quite place. "And now? You expect me to believe that? After everything you've done, after everything I've done for you?" Maria's chest tightened as the weight of the memories began to crash down on her. She remembered the late nights, the whispered secrets, the promises they had made to each other. But she also remembered the danger, the fear, the things Alex had done that had terrified her, that had forced her to leave. She had thought Alex was her friend, but in the end, Alex had been a force of chaos, someone she could never trust. "I didn't want to leave you, Alex," Maria continued, her voice trembling. "But you changed. You weren't the person I once knew. You became something dark." Alex's face twisted with fury at her words. "You think I changed? You think I became something else? Maybe I was just forced to evolve, just like you. You think I didn't see the way you turned your back on me when things got hard? You were too scared to face the truth, so you ran away." Maria shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't run from you, Alex. I ran from what we were becoming. I ran from the person I was becoming when I was around you." Alex stepped closer, their presence looming over her like a storm cloud. "And now look at you. You think you're better than me? You think you've moved on and left me behind?" Maria swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Alex's words pressing down on her chest. "I don't think I'm better than you," she whispered. "I just want to survive." For a long moment, the room was silent. The only sound was the soft drip of blood falling from Alex's head onto the floor. Maria's mind raced, trying to figure out what to do next. She couldn't fight Alex. She couldn't match their strength, their madness, but she could outsmart them. She had to. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Maria bolted towards the door. Alex's voice rang out, dark and threatening. "Don't think you can escape. You've always been mine, Maria. Always." Maria's hand grasped the doorknob, her heart pounding as she tried to turn it. But just as her fingers brushed against the cool metal, she felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. Alex had grabbed her, yanking her back with a strength that sent her crashing to the ground. "You're not going anywhere!" Alex spat, their voice cold as ice. Maria's mind raced. She couldn't let this be the end. She couldn't let Alex have the satisfaction of seeing her broken. She kicked her legs up, planting her feet against Alex's chest and pushing with everything she had. Alex stumbled back, momentarily off balance. Maria took the opportunity to scramble to her feet, her hand reaching for anything that could help her. Her fingers brushed against a kitchen knife. Without thinking, she grabbed it, her grip tight on the handle as she turned to face Alex once more. The blade gleamed in the dim light, its sharp edge reflecting the fear in Maria's eyes. "Stay away from me," she shouted, her voice filled with desperation. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Alex stood frozen for a moment, their eyes locked on the knife in Maria's hand. Then, slowly, they began to laugh, low and menacing, like the sound of thunder on the horizon. "You think that will stop me?" Alex asked, their voice almost playful. "You really think you can take me down with that little knife?" Maria's hand shook, but she didn't lower the blade. "I don't need to take you down," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that was creeping into her chest. "I just need to survive." For the first time, Alex's expression faltered. The laughter stopped, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed their face. They hadn't expected Maria to fight back. Not like this, but it wasn't enough to stop them. Not yet. Alex lunged forward, and in that moment, Maria's instincts took over. She swung the knife, aiming for Alex's arm, the blade cutting through the air with terrifying precision. It struck true, and Alex howled in pain, stumbling back with a look of shock and rage. Maria's heart was pounding, her body trembling from the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She didn't wait to see if Alex was coming after her again. She ran. She ran for her life, pushing past the fear, the panic, and the doubts that had held her back for so long. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. She had to escape. Maria ran through the darkened streets, her heart pounding in her chest. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each step more desperate than the last. The sound of Alex's voice echoed in her mind, a constant reminder that she wasn't free yet. She had to keep going. She had to escape before it was too late. Her feet carried her faster than she thought possible, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The cold night air stung her skin, but she barely noticed it, her mind consumed with the need to put distance between herself and Alex. She didn't know where she was heading, only that she couldn't go back. The world around her seemed to blur as she ran, the city lights casting eerie shadows on the pavement. She didn't know how much time had passed or how far she'd gone, but eventually her legs began to ache, and the weight of exhaustion started to sink in. She couldn't keep running forever. She needed to find somewhere to hide, somewhere to regroup. She spotted a small alleyway ahead, and without thinking, she ducked into it, her body shaking with the effort of trying to slow her breathing. She pressed herself against the brick wall, trying to make herself as small as possible, hoping that Alex wouldn't find her here. For a few minutes, there was only silence. The distant sounds of traffic and city life were muffled in the narrow alley, and Maria's heart slowed to a more manageable pace. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself, but the memories of the confrontation in the house came rushing back. Alex's face twisted in rage, their voice cold and cutting, the way they had hurt her, the way they had twisted everything between them into something unrecognizable. Maria clenched her fists, trying to push away the panic threatening to rise in her chest. She couldn't think about that now. She needed to focus on the present, on what she had to do next. She checked her phone, no messages, no calls. She felt a pang of loneliness, but she couldn't afford to dwell on that. She needed help, but who could she turn to? Who could she trust? Her mind raced through a list of names, friends, family, anyone who might be able to help her, but all of them felt like distant memories. She had shut everyone out when she'd run away from Alex. She had pushed them all away to protect herself from the storm that had followed her. She bit her lip, fighting back tears. But she couldn't cry. Not now. Not when she needed to be strong. Just as she was about to push herself off the wall and move further into the alley, a voice called out to her, "Maria?" She froze, her heart skipping a beat. The voice was familiar, but it didn't sound like Alex. She turned slowly, her body tense with fear, and there, standing at the mouth of the alley, was someone she hadn't seen in years. It was Jason. "Jason?" Maria whispered, her voice hoarse. She hadn't seen him since she'd left everything behind, including the people she cared about. Jason had been a friend, someone she had trusted before everything had gone wrong, but seeing him now, standing in front of her, brought a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "What are you doing here?" Jason asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "I saw you running. Are you okay?" Maria opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She didn't know how to explain everything that had happened, didn't know where to start, but then she realized there was no time for explanations. Not yet. "I'm not okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Alex, they're after me. I don't know what to do." Jason's eyes darkened with concern. "What do you mean? What's going on with Alex? Is someone hurt?" Maria swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. "I don't even know where to begin," she said, shaking her head. "I thought I could leave it all behind, but Alex, they won't let me go. They won't let me be free." Jason stepped closer, his expression softening. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said firmly. "Come with me. You're not alone, Maria. I'll help you." For a moment, Maria felt a flicker of hope. Could she really trust Jason? Could she really let someone back into her life after everything that had happened? But as she looked into his eyes, she saw nothing but concern, nothing but the sincerity that had always been there when they were friends. For the first time in what felt like forever, Maria allowed herself to believe that there was a chance for safety, a chance for something better. She nodded slowly, her body still trembling from the fear that had been building inside her. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll come with you." Jason led her through the alley, keeping his steps quiet and cautious. Maria's eyes flicked over her shoulder every few seconds, half expecting to see Alex following her. But there was no sign of them. She couldn't let herself relax, though. She knew Alex wouldn't give up so easily. They would come for her. They would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. Jason didn't try to press her for details, didn't ask about what had happened between her and Alex. He seemed to understand that now wasn't the time for questions, only for action. Eventually, they reached a small, unassuming apartment building on the edge of the city. Jason led Maria inside, through a narrow hallway, and up a flight of stairs. His apartment was small but cozy, with minimal furniture and a warm, inviting atmosphere. It wasn't much, but it felt like a refuge, a place where Maria could finally breathe, if only for a moment. Jason motioned for Maria to sit on the couch while he went to the kitchen to grab her a glass of water. Maria sank into the cushions, her body finally allowing itself to relax now that she was away from the immediate threat. But the relief was short-lived. The fear still lingered, gnawing at her, reminding her that Alex was out there, somewhere. "Here," Jason said as he returned, handing her the glass. "Drink this. You'll feel better." Maria took the glass, her hands still shaking as she lifted it to her lips. She drank deeply, the cold water soothing her dry throat. When she lowered the glass, she looked at Jason, meeting his gaze for the first time since they'd reunited. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice full of gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Jason smiled, though there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "You don't have to thank me. You're safe here, Maria. We'll figure this out together." Maria nodded, but deep down, she knew the hardest part was still ahead. Alex wasn't done with her. Not by a long shot. The night had settled into an uneasy calm. Maria sat on the couch in Jason's apartment, the silence around her both comforting and suffocating. She wanted to believe she was safe, that she could finally relax. But deep down, she knew better. Alex wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted, and what they wanted was her. Jason had been kind, offering her comfort and a safe place, But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Something was off about this whole situation. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She had trusted Jason once before. But after everything that had happened, could she trust him now? Jason was sitting across from her, scrolling through his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maria had tried to talk to him, tried to explain everything that had happened with Alex, but the words never seemed to come out right. Every time she tried to speak, she felt like she was choking on her own fears. "You okay?" Jason asked, looking up from his phone. His voice was soft, his tone concerned, but there was something in his eyes that Maria couldn't quite place. "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a small smile. "Just tired." Jason nodded, though the look on his face suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. He stood up, moving toward the window, glancing out at the street below. "We need to keep moving, Maria," he said, his voice low, almost urgent. "You can't stay here for long. Alex is looking for you. I'm not sure how much longer we have before they track us down." Maria felt a cold shiver run down her spine. He was right. They couldn't stay in one place for too long. But the thought of leaving this apartment, of running again, filled her with dread. She needed answers. She needed to know what was going on. "Where can I go? Who can I trust?" Maria asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jason turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I've been thinking about that," he said slowly. "I know someone who might be able to help. Someone who can get you off the radar, at least for a little while. But I need to make a call first." Maria nodded, not sure if she believed him. She didn't know who he was talking about, but she had no other options. If Jason was offering her a way out, she had to take it. Jason pulled his phone out of his pocket and stepped into the next room, his voice dropping to a murmur as he dialed the number. Maria sat there, her mind racing. Something didn't feel right. She had trusted Jason before, but now she wasn't so sure. Every instinct in her screamed that there was something wrong, something she wasn't seeing. She glanced at the window, her eyes scanning the street below. But there was no sign of Alex, no sign of anyone who might be following them. Still, the unease gnawed at her, the feeling that she was being watched. Suddenly, the phone rang out from the other room, and Maria jumped, her heart leaping in her chest. She could hear Jason's muffled voice, but the words were indistinguishable. Her gaze darted around the room, and that's when she saw it, something that made her blood run cold. On the coffee table, just inches away from where she sat, was a small silver key. The key was familiar, too familiar. She had seen it before. It was the key to a storage unit she had rented months ago, a place where she had hidden some of her belongings when she first tried to leave Alex. Maria's heart skipped a beat as she slowly reached for the key, her fingers trembling. The cold metal felt like ice in her hand. What was this doing here? How had Jason known about it? Without thinking, she stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her as she moved toward the door. She had to get out of there. She had to find out what was going on before it was too late. Just as she reached for the door, Jason's voice rang out from the other room, sharp and demanding. "Maria! Where are you going?" Maria froze, her hand still on the doorknob. She couldn't bring herself to turn around. Couldn't face him. Not now. The betrayal that she felt in her gut was almost overwhelming. Her mind flashed back to every moment they had shared, every word they had exchanged. Had it all been a lie? Had Jason been playing her this entire time? She couldn't trust him anymore. She couldn't trust anyone.